when does it make sense to surrender an annuity? You're going to know if you have an annuity today, if you should get rid of it or keep it in the next 10 minutes. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to keep it fun. Check this out. So this is someone who said the following inside of our free community, who said, annuities exit. I've seen a number of great videos on when to do annuities and when not to by the Root folks, including the ones in this classroom. Wondering if Ari or James have done one on how to evaluate if it makes sense to take the hit of an early surrender value rather than waiting until it matures. In my case, I'm 5 years into 4 different annuities with 10-year maturity dates. They all have caps between 4 to 4.25% on the growth. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. So simple math says it would take 2 to 3 years respectively to make up my losses if I got 10% while those investments made the max. Is this really all there is to that comparison? Obviously, other than risk tolerance of what if the market goes down in those years. And I said, I haven't done one yet, but I'll record one for you next week. And then it gets posted, obviously, a few months later. So that's what today's video is. Today is those months later, posting this. That kind of felt like Inception saying that for those of you who have seen that movie. Many of you have. Anyways, bad joke here. And there are a lot of those. And if you're like, I'm tired of these bad jokes, just hit me with the answers. I'm sorry, because this is how I like doing these videos, and it's a lot of fun for me, and I love getting to do it, but I also really do want to help. So I never want to do so many jokes that you're like, it's distracting me from actually learning here. It's a fine line, and I probably go heavier on the jokes than I should, but it's fun for me. So with that being said, my name is Ari Taublieb. I'm a certified financial planner. I am not on drugs. I love getting to do these videos. I don't even have coffee. Some of you are like, I don't believe you. Well, that's okay. You don't have to. But that is the truth. And if you look at all my videos and go, you're still not on coffees or any, what my clients say, financially performance enhancing supplements, I am not. You can run any test you guys would like on me. I am also the host of the Early Retirement Podcast and Chief Growth Officer here at Root. Now, let's really get into it. Please know this should be not construed as one-on-one financial advice. This is for fun, educational, informative purposes only. But yes, I do hope it is informative so that you can make a good decision when it comes to your retirement. Now, I am bringing up an example for you guys that you're going to see on my screen. And this is something we're going to show in detail. I'm going to walk you through it. But before I do, which I know is always annoying, it's like, just show it to me. I want to mention one thing based off of Dale's comment here. He says, they all have caps. What the heck does that mean? Well, that means it can only, if the market does 10%, it can only get 4%. That's what this annuity is you're essentially limiting your downside, which feels really good because if markets go down 30%, you're like, I was barely down 5%. This is awesome. But when markets are up 50%, which is very rare, they're up 50%. Well, you're only up 4%. So that's what's called a cap. Now, he's saying simple math says it takes 2 to 3 years to make up my losses if I got 10% while those investments made the max. Yes and no. The reason I say yes is your financial logic is not incorrect here, but I'm also thinking of, okay, let's assume markets do really well. Well, the reality is here, if you were to surrender it and then you decide, I'm not saying this person would do this, but you decide that you want to retire earlier or you want to buy a new house or you want to move, whatever it is. These annuities, you cannot get this income as you see fit. It is a fixed schedule. So let's assume this person surrendered and there'd now be $100,000 that's freed up. So let's assume he has an annuity worth 112. And I said, hypothetically, I want you to go get rid of it. And now you only have 100. He'd be like, this sucks. It was worth 112. Now it's worth 100. And I'm like, yes, but that's now 100,000 you could do something with. And then they're like, huh. So the point here is how much flexibility do we need? If this person also has a pension or rental income or inheritance, which I call the lucky sperm and egg club. I know I'm a little weird. Then I'd say, you know what? This probably you have other income sources. So if you were to surrender this, you'd be okay. Some of you are like, all my money's in an annuity. So if you were to surrender that and you have no other safe money and you don't know how to deploy that otherwise, that'd be a real risk. So the point here is I want you to look at the analysis deeper, which I'm going to show you in the next 5 minutes. Now, super quick overview for any of you annuity lovers or annuity haters. Annuities, when do they make sense? Annuities are really good for people that are like, I am not open to being educated on how markets work. I'm not being open to educated on volatility and how markets shift. And I'm just going to sleep better. I know maybe I can make more money doing something else, but I don't really care. I love the idea that I'm going to have guaranteed income for the rest of my life. But the issue with that is it's not really guaranteed because a lot of these annuities don't have an inflation adjustment inside them, and you lose so much potential return over time by taking on what feels like a comfort until you've been educated properly. There's a lot of fees and expenses embedded in these annuities. My parents bought a few and they were burned by them and they did not make sense for them at all. And they were sold because they were not savvy investors and they're like, we want something guaranteed income. It sounds good. And it didn't make sense for them. So they surrendered and now that money is doing a lot better and they can use it if they see fit. The problem with a lot of these annuities is, God forbid, you pass away. If there's no survivor benefit embedded, well, now you put $500,000 into this, you pass away after 5 years, that money goes kaputs. You can't give it to heirs. You can't do something else with it. So annuities, once again, I just kind of went through like the very few pros. In terms of cons, the big one is you don't control the investments. You don't control the growth. And it also can interrupt tax strategy because if you have annuity income that's coming every single month and you don't really control the way it's being distributed, you don't control when it makes sense, whether markets do good or markets do bad, you're just taking a set amount of income. That is a sure way to run the risk of running out of money if you want to retire early. So big issues I have with annuities. I'm very vocal about this. I'm not an annuity fan. There's only one time I ever recommended it, and it was early on in my career. And this person was basically, hey, I'm a widow. I've never learned about finances of any kind. I know you're excited about this stuff and you want to explain it, but I want this guaranteed product. Will I run out of money? They're about $5 million in this annuity. And I didn't recommend it because I said, here's something I think is way better. And they said, I get that, but I want the annuity. And I said, okay, you're the client. You get to decide, which is still what I believe, but I wish I educated them even more. Even if they said they were not open to being educated, I wish I would have forced myself to say, hey, I'm going to spend a Saturday with you. And if you still hate me and don't want the annuity after that, that's all I can do. But I didn't go that hard, which I wish I did. So looking back, we're going to now go through the analysis here. So there's a lot of different types of annuities. So first things first here, you might go, that's not my annuity. Yeah, there's a lot of different. There's fixed indexed annuities. There's variable annuities. There's so many different types of annuities. I don't want you guys to think all annuities are equal because they're not. Now, with that being said, here's an example. So here's someone that came to me. $441,000 was the value of their annuity, of that policy. If they surrendered it, it was a $30,000 or 7% hit. And so they're like, I don't know if that's worth it. I mean, $410,000, that's a lot of money. Is it worth me essentially taking that hit intentionally to go invest it otherwise? In their case, they believed it did make sense. And so the point here is this does not feel good. This $30,000, you're basically eliminating $30,000 overnight. Now, if this person were to say, I'm going to take the hit and I'm just going to keep it in cash because I don't like this annuity and I don't know what else I'm going to do, I'd say there's a real risk to that. I mean, a significant risk where you're not only kind of confirming that you're a purchasing power risk, which is basically, will your money still be worth the same amount later in life? Because if you have 440,000 and you subtract 30,000 and you've got 411 technically left over and you don't go invest that, well, that 411,000 is not going to be worth 411,000. In 20 years, it's worth so much less to the point where it's like, hey, that's like bare. It's like not only not keeping up with inflation, it's like we're losing money just sitting on it. And I'll see people make that mistake of, got it, I saw something that says annuities are bad, I'm going to keep it in cash. Well, don't do that, okay? Now, I made some assumptions on this, but the first assumption I made here is if they go and surrender this policy, and they were already not annuity fans, they're just like, hey, can you show me some logic so basically I can feel better about making this surrender? Well, the first thing is I'm choosing this 30,000 number, but you guys could shift this number. If you're like, nope, it turns out mine's 8% or whatever it is, okay, you could just choose that number. So for you, and this is what I would encourage all of you to do, I'll zoom out for just a second here, 8%, that might be the surrender charge right now on your current fund, which means 441,000. If you were to go here and pay 35,000 as a surrender charge or fee, now it's worth 406. Well, if you have 406,000 and I am under the assumption my client will get 8% growth based off of the way we correspond. Well, in 1 year, you didn't make your money back. Now you can see you're at 438, not 441. But by year 2, if you get 8%, it's 474, 511, 552, 597, 644. Now you might go, I don't want to plan on 8%. Okay, you can choose a different number. But this is me saying, if you took a 5% withdrawal rate on this, how much income could it throw off? And so at the beginning, you can see here, it could throw off about $21,000. But over time, in your late retirement, it's thrown off $80, $90, $100, $120,000. So the point here is that's assuming 8% growth. You don't have to assume that, but in my client's example, the surrender charge was 7%. So if you take 7%, what you can see is after the first year, if they take a 7% hit and then get 8% growth, they're already on top. So it makes a lot of sense. The biggest one I've ever seen is I've seen a 15% surrender charge. So let's assume the surrender charge on a $440,000 policy was $66,000. That would not be fun, and they'd be at $375. That'd be what it's worth. And let's assume you're like, I don't want to plan on 8% growth. I want to plan on 7% growth, okay? Just hypothetically for that first year. You could do it for all the years, but let's just do the first few years just so you can see my example here. Well, what that would mean is 441, that's what we're trying to get back to, right? So it's worth 375 because there's this huge surrender charge. It's now, after the first year, up 7% at 401,000, then 430, then 460, then 496. So in year 3, we beat what it was worth, but we also didn't really account for what this would have grown by. And this probably would have grown by 3-4%. So if this is growing, what that probably tells us is we're probably around year 5 or 6. Now, I don't really see a 15% surrender charge often, about 7, 8, 6, 5. Those are the normal numbers here. So what we always want to do is go, okay, not 70%. That'd be crazy. 7%. So this is a really simple tool that I will use. Like, this is the logic. Sometimes I'll use super fancy software for some situations. Sometimes I'll use something like this. But this is the way I would look at it, because for this couple, Mary and Tom, there's a big age gap here. And the reason an annuity doesn't make sense for them is there was no survivor benefit. So let's assume this is Tom's annuity here. Tom passes away and he decides, we're going to keep it really simple here. Let's say, let me do a new one for you guys so you can see it. Tom's annuity. Let's just take this number here and we're going to do 1.04%. And I'm just going to do this one as well, just so you guys can see an example here, okay? So let's assume he's like, I'm going to keep this and it's getting 4% growth. Second year, it's worth 459. Third year, it's worth 477. And then Tom passes away and Tom is 68 years old. That money goes away entirely. And so that's one of my big concerns with annuities is it's not really helping a spouse or heirs unless there's a clause in that for it. And I don't see that often. So from like just the real classic, like, hey, does it make sense to surrender the annuity? First of all, do this. But second of all, like, choose your own assumptions. Like, I'm choosing here 7%. You could choose 6%. You could see how many years will it take to break even. You'll be able to analyze and go, well, I'm at a 5% surrender rate and I want to plan on 5% growth. Okay, like run those numbers and see when would I break even here. Because if you were to do that, you can see here and you do that for the first 3 years, just for an example's sake. If you're at, you have a surrender charge of $22,000. So your 441 becomes 419. Well, if you get 5% growth on that, you're pretty much even after the first year. Now, if your surrender charge was more like 9%, you'd go, ooh, okay, well, I'm not going to be even for 2 years. Am I comfortable with that? Well, for most people, they are comfortable with it because they can see what it would lead to. Significant growth over time, $2 million plus. And anytime if they pass away along the way here, those dollars go to their spouse or children or foundation, whatever they want. So this is how I would look at an annuity analysis if you're wondering if I should surrender my policy. If this was helpful and you have an annuity, let me know. If you're like, hey, I don't even know what you were going through here. I know you seemed excited, but it's not for me. That's okay. That's why people pay us, so that we get to do this planning work and connect this to every aspect of your plan. Most of you have seen it as well, but if you have not, inside of the Early Retirement Academy, which is a one-time small fee, you don't get one-on-one guidance, but it is the software that we use. You can run your own what-if scenarios to see, okay, if I were to use an annuity, or if I were to use an investment product, or if I were to assume this rate of return. Like, I like using Excel, and I like using it in combination with this software here that I use with my clients, because I want to be able to run these tax projections and show the different brackets and get really complex with it. You might be like, that's not for me. You might be like, no, this is really cool. Okay, well, you can go ahead and get access to this in the description of this video. That's it. I'll see you guys next time.